Hello Smashers and welcome back to a new video. Now if you are new to the channel, hello and welcome. My name is Jansen Smith and I post the very best tips, tricks, tutorials, literally anything to do with Amazon FBA, it's on this channel. So if you're new to selling, if you're just learning, or if you're already quite experienced, you found the perfect place, so please consider subscribing. Now in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the B word, Brexit. Now, if you've never heard of Brexit before, it's probably something that's not going to impact you, so you don't need to worry about this video. But for everybody else, this video is going to be really important because I'm going to be talking about how Brexit is going to impact us, the Amazon FBA sellers, and what we can do to try and protect ourselves from the unlikely event of a no-deal Brexit. I do say unlikely event, that's what I'm trying to tell myself. It is looking increasingly likely as the days go by, but I'm going to be talking in this video about a no-deal, just so we can prepare ourselves for the worst. If you are not aware of what I mean by no-deal Brexit, it effectively just means we're going to be leaving the EU without making a deal at all with the members of the European state. So currently things like freedom of movement, so the fact that we can go to Spain and France without having to get, a visa, and we can just pass through customs, all things like that. In the event of a no-deal Brexit, we won't be able to do that anymore, and it will basically be like traveling to a country like China or America. You'll have to go through customs and things like that. So what are the effects? What's going to be the impact of a no-deal Brexit? So the first way that Brexit has impacted people in the UK, especially Amazon FBA sellers, is because of the impact to the foreign exchange rate. Now, the foreign exchange rate basically just means the rate that you get when you're buying, say, US dollars or euros. So you'll know about this for when you go on holiday. But why is it important for Amazon FBA sellers? Well, it's important because we buy our goods from China or internationally, and typically we buy those goods in US dollars. So as the foreign exchange rate worsens, that means that the dollar effectively has become more expensive, and I'll try and simplify that in a moment. But first, the reason that that has happened is because of the uncertainty about what the heck is going to go on, what the heck is going to happen with Brexit. Is a deal going to be made or not? So that's caused people or investors to sell their holdings of the pound. So just to simplify it, it's a bit like a share price of a company. If a company announces that it looks like there's going to be trouble ahead, it's not going to make as much profit in the future, then investors will sell shares in that company and the share price will fall. It's very similar thing to what's happening with the British pound at the moment. Investors are getting a bit worried about Brexit. They're not wanting to hold it, they're wanting to hold other currencies instead, which is resulting in the value of the pound depreciating. And right now it's at like a 31-year low. So this is the worst it's been for 31 years. So what does a worsening foreign exchange rate mean for Amazon FBA sellers? Well, it means that if you make purchases in a different currency, specifically the dollar or euros, it means that your purchases are going to cost more in pounds. So that means, unfortunately, profit margins are going to be reduced unless, of course, you increase your sales price. Now, this has really impacted me actually in the last 4 weeks since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister, and he said, look, we are doing Brexit on the 31st of October, whether we have a deal or not. Since he said that, the foreign exchange rate has really tanked. It was about 1.25 dollars per pound a few weeks ago, and it's now about 1.2. So my costs, when I'm about to pay my supplier in China, my costs have increased by about 5%. So not a happy bunny whatsoever. So just to make this easier for you guys to understand, if we have a look at a chart here, which basically shows the foreign exchange rate, you can see here in April of this year, the foreign exchange rate was about $1.33 per pound. So what does that mean? That means if I was making a $1,000 order with a supplier in China, then that would be costing me £750. So if I had £750 budget, that's the maximum that I could afford. Now today, you can see here, it's absolutely just dropped off a cliff. Ever since Boris Johnson got in and basically said, look, we are leaving the EU, whether we have a deal or not. And since investors have kind of started to be a lot more worried about it, you can see that the value has really dropped off. What does that mean? Well, that means that now my $1,000 order, the same order for the same quantity, is now costing me £826 instead of 750. So that is an increase of 10% in not a very great amount of time. And you can see exactly, guys, why I'm so annoyed, because my profit margins have reduced. They've not reduced like horrifically, but they've reduced enough for it to be annoying. So that is the first way that as Amazon FBA sellers are going to be impacted by Brexit, or we have been impacted by Brexit. And in the event of a no deal Brexit, if we do actually leave the EU without a deal whatsoever, this rate here is going to get worse. There are some analysts that think it could hit 1.1, it could hit parity, so 1 to 1. I do think that is very, very unlikely, but it's something that is certainly worth considering. Now, the next thing to impact us Amazon FBA sellers as a result of Brexit, and this one hasn't actually taken effect yet, but it will in the event of a no deal Brexit. The second one is related to customs and duties. Now, currently, when you import something from China, those goods come into Europe, typically Germany or France. They'll go through customs and duties, they'll clear, and then they'll be sent to the UK where they'll be distributed to Amazon. Now, as soon as those goods have cleared customs within Europe, they are free to travel. So you can post your goods to France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, wherever, and those goods won't have to go through customs and duties again. So it's basically like posting something within the UK. You don't have to pay any more duties or any more taxes. Now, in the event that we do have a no deal Brexit, all of that is going to change. We're not going to have agreements with any countries in relation to customs and duties. So what does that mean? Well, it means that firstly, goods being sent from China or internationally are going to have to go through customs over here in the UK. So that, of course, is probably going to mean that the backlog at customs is going to be a lot longer, and therefore we're going to have to wait for a greater amount of time before our goods clear customs and we can start selling. Now, in addition to that, the rate of duties and taxes in relation to customs, that's kind of an agreement that we have, I believe, with the EU. So if we do leave the EU with a no deal Brexit, that means that those rates and duties could be liable to change. They could increase or they could decrease. That's something that we really don't know yet. And the third thing that will be impacted as a result of a no deal Brexit, and this in my opinion is the biggest one, is that goods are going to have to clear customs and duties again if they are to be sent from the UK to any country in the EU. So that means that if you do the European Fulfilment Network with Amazon, which is where goods are stored in an Amazon warehouse in the UK and then sent to a country in the EU, that means that we or the buyer are going to have to pay duties and taxes again. So we're going to be effectively getting taxed twice. We're going to be taxed once when the goods arrive from China to the UK and they clear customs, and then again if we send goods from the UK to France or Germany or wherever in the EU, if we're selling and doing the European Fulfilment Network. So obviously that is something that is going to be quite a big impact to us Amazon FBA sellers. It's again going to impact profit margins, and it might even mean that sales reduce because, of course, if goods have to go through customs again when we're sending to France or Germany, then wait times are going to be longer. Customers on Amazon Germany and Amazon France, they want their goods now. They're prepared to wait, say, 2 or 3 days for it to arrive from the UK to their home destination. But if it has to clear customs again, well, that's going to mean a wait time of, say, 5 to 7 days. They're probably not going to want to do that, so they're not going to buy. So that's another really bad impact of a no deal Brexit. Fingers crossed that it doesn't happen. Now, the last thing that I could think of that will be impacted as a result of a no deal Brexit, and guys, I promise this is the last one. I'm sorry to drag it out and make you feel all gloomy. The last thing that will be impacted is in relation to consumer confidence. Now, at the beginning of the video, you'll remember I talked about how recently the foreign exchange rate has really worsened. Now, it's not just Amazon FBA sellers that import from overseas, it's pretty much every single company in the UK. So that means that recently, most companies in the UK, their costs have increased as well as a result of the foreign exchange rate worsening. Now, in all likelihood, those companies will also import from countries in the EU. So that means in the event of a no-deal Brexit, they'll have to pay additional customs and duties that they didn't have to because we previously had a deal with the European Union. So that will mean that costs will increase for them even more, not just from a worsening foreign exchange rate. Now, that will mean that as their costs will increase, they've recently been increasing because of the foreign exchange rate, and they're going to continue to increase if we go through a no-deal Brexit. That means that their profit margins will be squeezed. They'll have pressure from their investors and their owners, and they'll increase their prices. And who does that impact? That impacts us. It impacts the man on the street. Everybody is going to feel the squeeze on their wallets because everything's going to be a lot more expensive. So that means that generally people in the UK are going to have less disposable income. So they're going to have less money that they can allocate to items like posture correctors and other luxury items that they don't necessarily need, they just want, because they're going to be spending a bigger proportion of their salary and their earnings on essential items like heating and food and drink and things like that. So that is how we as the Amazon FBA seller are going to be impacted. Consumers are going to have less confidence, they're going to have less money to be able to spend on the luxury, non-essential items, the things that typically Amazon FBA sellers sell. So those are the three main areas that I think a no-deal Brexit will hurt the most. Now, what can we do to minimize the pain? There's no doubt about it, a no-deal Brexit is going to be pretty painful for everybody, not just Amazon FBA sellers. The good thing is that the UK government really does want to avoid this scenario. They are working very hard at trying to come up with some sort of deal. I know it might not seem like they are, but they really are trying to come up with something that is in everybody's interest. However, the EU, they're just not willing to play ball. They're saying no a lot, so it's kind of making the process a bit lengthier. Now, Boris Johnson has said that the deadline is the 31st of October. Who knows if that's a bluff? Hopefully it is, because in the event that we don't have a deal by the 31st of October, we are leaving and it's going to suck. So what can you do to minimize the pain of a no-deal Brexit? Now, I've written down a couple of things that I would think about doing. It's not an exhaustive list by any means. It's just something that you could possibly think about if you do want to lessen the pain of a no deal. The first thing is you could buy some US dollars today to protect yourself against a further fall in the event of a no deal Brexit. So if you know for a fact that you're going to be spending $1,000 at the start of October on some more stock, you could buy those dollars now, get the dollars in your bank account now, so that when the time comes in October, you can just send that immediately to your supplier and you don't have to worry about how much it's going to cost you in sterling. You'll know how much it's going to cost you today. So that obviously is a big risk because we don't know what's going to happen with Brexit. If a deal is made by October, then the foreign exchange rate will in all likelihood increase and hopefully go back to about 1.3 where it was before the pain started in April. The next thing that you'll need to do, and this applies to everybody in the event of Brexit deal or no deal anyway, is be extra careful about your profit margins. If your profit margins are about 10 or 15% now, you're very likely going to be making a loss by the time October comes in the event of a no-deal Brexit, because the foreign exchange rate is just going to continue to plummet and those costs for you are going to increase even more. So guys, be extra careful about profit margins. Make sure you calculate and you recalculate what they are, include VAT, include pay per click. If you don't know how to do that, I'll put a link in the corner of the video now to a previous video where I spoke about that. So be extra careful, guys, and make sure that you aim for a profit margin of at least 30%. Now, the next one is you should communicate and educate your suppliers. Who knows? Your supplier in China might never even have heard of Brexit, might literally be like, what on earth is that? So make sure you tell them about it, how it's impacting us over here, how costs for us are a lot higher now, and see if they'll listen to that and give you a discount. You never know. They might be like, oh, okay, fair enough, costs are a lot higher for these guys. We'll be a bit more generous with discounts and things like that. So I would certainly mention that. And the next one, and this is something that I've recently started to do, is sell in Europe. Now, You'll remember earlier I was talking about in the event of a no-deal Brexit, that means that if you're doing the European Fulfilment Network, so where your goods are stored in the UK and sent to Europe, costs are going to go up because the goods are going to have to go through customs and duties again. Well, if you do pan-European network, that means that you won't have to go through that because your goods will be sent straight from China to Germany or France. They'll be stored there. They'll go through customs clearance once. You'll only have to pay the duties and taxes once. And then from there on in, you don't have to worry about that. The wait times will be like next day for customers ordering in Germany if the goods are stored in Germany, and customers won't have to pay duties and any other fees again. And this is the one scenario where a worsening foreign exchange rate is actually good. So if you think of it now, let's say that 20 euros at the moment is worth £16 to us. So we sell goods in Germany for 20 euros. When we convert that, we get £16. Could say that's okay, making a nice little profit. If the foreign exchange rate continues to worsen, and let's just say it becomes parity, so 1-to-1, that means that if we sell our goods now for 20 euros, we actually can convert that and get £20. So our profit margin will increase. So that is the only benefit to a worsening foreign exchange rate. It is bad. A worsening foreign exchange rate is bad for people that import, but it's great for people that export and sell in a different currency. So guys, if in the event that that does happen, I would really recommend having a strong consideration about selling through the pan-European fulfillment network. Unfortunately, you will have to register for VAT and lots of other things to do with that will occur. But I do believe that the benefits, the pros will outweigh the cons as a result of the currency differential. So hopefully you haven't found this video too negative and downbeat, guys. I'm just trying to be brutally honest about the impact of Brexit. There's absolutely no doubt about it. It is going to be pretty painful if we do have a no-deal Brexit. So keep your fingers and toes crossed, and let's really hope that Boris Johnson and the government can come up with some sort of deal where none of this will apply and where the foreign exchange rate can increase back to 1.3 and maybe even higher, meaning higher profit margins and more money for us to take home and enjoy. So that is it for this week, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. If you did, please remember to subscribe, and I will see you next time.